This tutorial will be how to draw a 9-point value scale that is going to help you determine value ranges, darks to light, lights to dark, and how to manipulate your drawing materials, your pencils, to create three-dimensional form in space using this image as a reference. Alright, to begin with, you're going to need these materials. We have here a ruler, a hole punch, kneaded eraser, which is an eraser that pulls apart and is used a certain way to erase pencil. This is what the kneaded eraser looks like when it's still in its packaging. So you take off the plastic first. This is a regular hard eraser, pencil sharpener. Your pencils, your drawing pencils, will be in different darknesses. So there's a little number here on the end of each pencil. This says 4B, which is going to be the darkest one that we use. Then there's 2B, which is a little bit lighter, it's a little bit harder, and it's not as dark. And then we have the HB, which is the equivalent of a number 2 pencil. So that's like a middle value of the pencil. And then you have the blending tool. So I have the HB here and this one are both the same pencil. So we're going to use those to go ahead and get started. Alright, to get started, again, we're drawing a 9-point value scale, which is a 9-inch value scale, a 9 by 1 inch chart. So we're going to draw this at the upper end of your paper because we are going to cut this off and use it as a visual measuring tool. So I'm going to make my ruler nice and straight. I'm going to draw 9 inches. Notice that the inch does not start right at the end of the ruler. And then I'm going to mark off just a little small line here where the inches are. And then I'm going to go ahead and measure an inch down. And then I'm going to make sure it's nice and straight. Draw my line across, measure where my inch notations are. Mark that off, and then I'm going to go ahead and connect the lines. Make sure your ruler is nice and straight. And you'll have 9 1-inch squares when you're done. Alright, now the first square is going to be the lightest light, so we're going to leave that white. And underneath we're going to make a little notation to help remind us which pencil we're going to be using in those squares when we do the layering, and this will make more sense in a minute. So we started with the HB for these 2 squares, 2B, 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 4B, 4B, 4B. Now, I'm going to start layering, starting with the square second to the left. And I'm holding my pencil like this because I want to use the side of the lead. And I'm going to be just gently doing this kind of sketch-like layer, very soft, I don't have a lot of pressure on the pencil. It's okay if I go over the lines a little bit because I'll clean that up later. And I'm doing one even layer of very, very light pencil. We want this value scale to go gradually, step by step, darker to the same degree. So each square will gradually get a little bit darker. One layer so far. So I'm still got that HB pencil. I'm going to continue on the third square, going in the other direction. And same thing, I'm just going to very, very lightly layer over all the squares. The same amount of pressure. Try to fill up each square as evenly as you can. And notice how I'm holding my pencil real loose, down at the end of the pencil like this. All right, now this one says 2B. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my 2B pencil. You can see where it says 2B on the end right there. And in this first 2B square, I'm going to angle my pencil now a little bit more. I'm angling my lines, again, slightly different direction as I'm layering over. And then I'm going to continue that again, change the direction up. This is the first step to creating your value scale. It's not going to look perfect yet. You're not trying to get the exact value yet. It's a long process. So now I'm going to get the 4B pencil, and in this third to last square, I'm going to, again, with some pressure, a little bit heavier now, but the same kind of pressure all the way across. And now I'm going to go in another direction, again, slightly different angle, layering over, and then we're going to go ahead and do that. All right, now we take a look at these, and we're going to use our blending tool. So you'll notice that the blending tool is a little bit dark on the end. That's the graphite, that's the lead that's been on there. You really don't clean these. You can clean them using sandpaper, which I'll show you another time. But it's okay that this happens. You also want to hold it gently, because if you press down too hard like that, you're going to destroy the tip, and it's nice to have that tip to get in there and shade corners. So I'm going to very, very lightly blend over this square, and I'm smoothing it out. I'm using this pencil to smooth out my uneven values, which are the darks, the range of dark. And I'm going to start with the lightest one. I'm going to go all the way across, square by square. If I went across like this, I would alter the value nuances that I'm starting to create. So I just want to be careful. And in this step, again, we're just smoothing out, and what we're going to start to see emerge are the different values in each square gradually getting darker, but it's not quite there yet. All right, now I'm going to take a look at what I have, and this one's a pretty good value. I'm going to keep that the way that it is because it's fairly close to the lightest one. It's pretty light. This one, though, looks a little bit too much like this value right here. So I'm going to make it a little bit darker using my HB. And I'm going to draw right over that. Oh, that's a nice value. Not too heavy. All right. And now I'm going to, let's smooth that. That's a good comparison. Very nice. So that looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna go to the next square, and I'm gonna use the 2B, and I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna add a little bit more pressure to the pencil, and it looks pretty close, but let's see what it looks like after I've smoothed it before I add another layer on top of that. See how the smoothing kind of makes things look a little bit darker, but it does need a little bit more. So every time I add another layer, I'm going in a slightly different direction. And I want to be careful that I don't get too dark. That's good. So let me go on to the next one. And I'm going to add a little bit more pressure now, because this one needs to be even a little bit darker, and I can tell I'm going to need another layer. I might even need another layer, but I'm going to go ahead and see what this looks like. Well, let me do another one. All right, very good, that'll work. Now we're gonna get a little bit darker in this one, still keeping with the 2B. Putting a little bit more pressure on there. All right, let's see what that looks like. Oh, we need a little bit more here. Yeah, that's good. So then I'll just smooth that out. All right, so the last three are going to be with the 4B. And let's go ahead and start with this one. It's a much softer lead, and so it's going to be darker. The softer your lead, the darker the value. And also the higher the number, the softer the lead. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Try to make it smooth all the way across. Okay, if you go over the lines, we'll clean that up. Let's go over this one more time. All right, that looks a little bit darker compared to that one. So we want to do a step progression so that it's not all of a sudden super dark. Each square gets a little bit darker to the same degree. And of course, that's all visual estimations, because there's no real physical way that you can measure that otherwise. Let's see what this looks like. Yep, we're going to need that. These two look really the same, so that's nice. See how that looks? And smooth that one out. And then the last one. The last one is going to be used for the darkest darks that you're going to have in your drawing. So you want to make sure that there's a nice contrast there. I'm putting a little bit more pressure on the pencil now because it needs to be darker. It's easier to get darker than it is to get lighter. So that's why you don't want to get too dark too soon. See how this looks? I think we could get just a little bit darker. There we go. All right, very good. So to clean up the edges, I like to use the kneaded eraser. Cleans itself, but when you pull it apart, it's a soft eraser, but you can pinch it so that you can get right up to the edges of a small space and erase it. It will also smear a little bit, so you just want to be careful about that. And I just want to erase what was in there. All right. I noticed there's a little line that went through my value scale there, and see, every time you go over a line that's already been drawn, it makes the line darker. So you want to be careful that you have a nice clean start to your value scale. So we're going to use this as a tool, and to do that we're going to first cut it off of the page, and I want it to be fairly close to, I want to trim off as much of the white as possible, but I'm going to leave some one end open. It's okay if you cut off now the numbers. That was just to help you figure out where to put each number pencil. So I can hold it like this without smearing, and I'm going to show you how we're going to use it as a tool to compare values. But first thing we're going to do then is to punch a hole as close to the center as possible inside each square. And I'll show you why we're going to do that. Even the square that is white. Okay, so that this is what your 9-point value scale will look like. So the other exercise we do for learning how to use the graphite pencils and creating different values and using the tool is to draw the sphere, which is a practice of looking at the classic order of light and using the step scale. So this is the reference and this is the drawing. If we wanted to check how we were doing with our values, we would use this to help us compare. So I know the darkest value right here is aligned with this last darkest square right here, and I can take it over here to my drawing to double check it to make sure that it is correct. Let's do another one. Right here, if I'm checking out this value, it's probably going to be right here on my reference, and this is how it should be right here on my drawing. So you can literally check any place around on the reference to your drawing to double check and see, you know, is it too light? Is it too dark? How does that look? And some of these drawings will leave the light of the page, so that would be there and it would be there as well. So that's a 9-step or 9-point value scale, and with the first two drawing assignments, one is the classic order of light, drawing the sphere, and then the next one is drawing the apple.